We have a major role in this issue. We share boundaries with the Palestinians. We share boundaries with Gaza. Jordan shares boundaries with the West Bank. The stability of this part of the world means the stability of the Arab region.
That's Hosni Mubarak, president of Egypt. He's held that position since 1981. He spoke with Charlie Rose about his country's role in the Mideast peace process. Welcome back to Bloomberg News. President Obama, President Mubarak are in a meeting right now inside the Oval Office. This is President Mubarak's first visit to Washington in 5 years. The two leaders are expected to discuss the prospects for peace in the region, but just how dependent is that peace on prosperity, not just diplomacy? Joining us now from Washington is Tamara Wittes. She's director of the Brookings Institution's Middle East Democracy and Development Project. Tamara, Egypt, #2 recipient of foreign aid from this country. How much conversation is going to be had about economic diplomacy, not just political?
Unfortunately, I think the focus of this meeting is going to be on high politics, and that's despite the fact that the global economic crisis has hit the Egyptian people very, very hard. It's by far the largest country in the Arab world. It's got 81 million people, and 1/5 of them live on less than $2 a day. So if we're concerned about the stability of the Arab region, as President Mubarak noted, we need to also worry about the health of the people of Egypt.
A lot of talk there about the issue of unemployment within Egypt. I believe 40% of the population's at the poverty line or below it. Can you have a conversation about peace in a region when you have such a high percentage of the population unemployed and living at such poverty levels?
You know, there's a lot of discussion about showing the Israeli and Palestinian peoples the benefits of peace for them. And, of course, they are the ones who have the most at stake in seeing this conflict resolved and being able to live in peace and security. But for the region as a whole, I think there is hope that a resolution of the Arab-Israeli conflict would allow the region to become more integrated, both internally and with the global marketplace. Egypt has made some strides toward liberalizing its economy and trying to link up with global trade a bit more in the last 5 years or so, but they've still got a long way to go. Peace would help, but they could do a lot more on their own.
Right. Well, President Obama in June, when he was in Cairo and gave that very widely watched speech indicating very much a change in policy from the previous administration in terms of his approach to dealing with the Middle East, singled out the role of commerce here, saying, major U.S. companies very active in Egypt. He named Coca-Cola, Microsoft as key in investing and in training workers in the region. Does that indicate anything to you about the role the financial, the corporate community may be playing?
I think that there is a lot of interest in the business community in closer economic ties with Egypt, in expanding the trade relationship and seeing what policy changes can be made, especially regulatory changes on the Egyptian side, that would really encourage the growth of the private sector and private investment in Egypt. The U.S. is already the biggest private contributor of FDI to Egypt. It's about $9 billion in U.S. investment there, and a lot of Fortune 500 companies active in the country. It's a very large market, potentially, if the country's development level can be increased to the point where those Egyptians can really become good consumers of American products.
Well, in that same speech in Cairo, President Obama said on science and technology, we, meaning the American government, the American people, will launch a new fund to support technological development in Muslim-majority countries and to help transfer ideas to the marketplace so that they can create jobs. Technological development, I mean, are we going to see in this administration perhaps the CEOs of the world come forward more as diplomats and play more of a key role? Have you seen any follow-through from this speech in June into actual implementation in policy as yet?
Yeah, so far on the science and technology front, there hasn't been a lot of specific follow-through from the administration. They did announce they wanted to establish this fund to promote science and technology cooperation. I think in the private sector there are there's some interest in this idea. There are also concerns particularly about the protection of intellectual property. And so I think that as this goes forward, the private sector has a very important role to play, and I'm sure that its voice will be heard by the administration. I think what governments can really do here is create incentives for the private sectors in these countries to work together. And where governments in the Arab world so far haven't paid a lot of attention is in making their own investments in research and development. In the U.S., a lot of our technological innovation came from government-funded research, and we need to see some more of that in the Arab world as well.
Hosni Mubarak, of course, has been president for many years now. There's a lot of talk about his son, a former investment banker, potentially succeeding him as president of that country. Any indication there as to what financial economic opportunity may be opened up should that happen, or is that a negative to have sort of this follow through in lineage and leadership?
You know, it's a negative in terms of Egypt's political development. I think that they're looking at the possibility of a dynastic succession rather than opening their political system along with opening up their economic system. Okay. It's clear in some of the debates on economic reform in Egypt, debates, by the way, that Gamal Mubarak has helped to push forward, that there's need for more economic reform, but there's also need for public debate on these issues, and that's why they need greater political freedom there.
All right, thank you so much. Tamara Wittes, Senior Fellow at the Brookings Institution. You can see the entire Charlie Rose interview with Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak tonight on Bloomberg, 8 and 10 p.m. Tune in.